guys, this is Miss Leslie from the Paul Sawyer Public Library, and as you can see, we are in a different location. We're actually in my kitchen, because for today's PSPL Pantry, I'm going to show you how to make one of my family favorites, no-bake cookies. And when I was a little girl, I was always in the kitchen with my grandmother and my mom, and I've got tons of their recipes that have been passed down from generation to generation. I was the official stirrer for a long time, and I also got to measure as well. That's how I actually learned some of my fractions, by measuring. And one of my grandfather's favorites was no-bake cookies. Now there's lots of different variations on them. This recipe actually has peanut butter in them, but if you're allergic to peanut butter, no worries, I am. I'm actually making this for someone else. You can use other nut butters if you're not allergic to those nuts, or you can use cookie butter. And actually, that's pretty tasty. I've made it as well. Because peanut butter is actually, like the oats, is your thickening agent. So what I've got already ready to go, I've got all my ingredients. My rolled oats, my cocoa powder, my butter, my peanut butter, my vanilla, my milk, everything. And I like to get it all out and ready to go, so I'm not scrambling through the pantry trying to find it. And actually, on a pot, coming to a boil back here, so we can kind of speed up the process so you can see the finished product. I have half the recipe because I've pre-made the other half so you can see it all as we go along. So in my pot back here, I have my cocoa powder, I have my butter, I have my sugar, I have my milk, all coming to a boil back here. And this recipe will be on Facebook, so you'll have all the ingredients and all the measurements and all the directions for it. I'm just kind of show you how to get it all going. But I have that coming to a boil back here to speed up the process. So it looks like it's coming to a good boil back here. And anytime you guys are in the kitchen, just make sure if you're around a stove or an oven and it's on, just make sure you are with your family and there's always an adult present. Because the one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to get burned or you don't want to get hurt. And when it's something that's coming to a boil in particular or the oven's on, it's definitely a dangerous spot to be in. So always make sure there's an adult present. Because when I was cooking and baking with my family, my mom or my grandmother were always around. So in the back here, I've got this coming to a boil. And it's actually coming to a pretty good boil. I had it on medium heat. I turned it back just a little bit so you could see it a little bit better. But usually medium heat will bring it up to a boil. I let it boil for about a minute just to get all that sugar dissolved, because you don't want to hear that sugar in the back. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it off the heat, and it's going to look like that. So it's going to look like a nice cocoa-y richness, kind of like pudding almost. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my peanut butter. And like I said, this recipe will be on Facebook. I've already got it pre-measured out. And like I said, if you do not want to use peanut butter, if you are allergic to it, no worries whatsoever. The cookie butter one is actually pretty good. And now I'm going to add my oats. And all these measurements will be on Facebook. And sometimes the recipe actually calls for 3 cups of rolled oats and a cup of peanut butter. But like I said, I halved it so you could see both ends when it was cooking and when it was finished. But if you want to add a little bit more, if it's still a little soupy after you get done, just add a few more oats or a little bit more of your butter, or your cookie butter, or your peanut butter. I'm going to add a little bit of vanilla. And one of my favorite tricks, instead of using a measuring spoon, this little cap is about a teaspoon. So it calls for a half of a teaspoon of vanilla, because I halved it. So I'm going to half this teaspoon. I'm going to add that. And you don't need a whole lot of salt, because that peanut butter is pretty salty. So I've got some salt here. I'm going to add a pinch of salt just to give it a little zip. And then I'm going to start stirring. So I'm going to actually move my peanut butter bowl, which is empty, out of the sink. I'm going to move that away, even though that burner wasn't on. And I'm going to start stirring it. And I'm going to show you what it looks like, but I've got to get in here and get it stirred first. And this actually hardens pretty quick. But one of the things I've found with cooking and baking in particular, is temperature outside, humidity and things like that can wreak havoc on candy especially, but sometimes on these cookies. So like I said, it might be a little bit soupier than it normally would be. Like I said, if you want to add a little bit more peanut butter or a little bit more oats, it will thicken up pretty quick. If not, what you can do is pop them in the fridge or the freezer just to get them hardened, and it will do really well. These cookies do not have to be in the freezer or the fridge. Once they've hardened, you can put them in an airtight container, and they keep for about 3 or 4 days. But if you do need to get them a little bit more set, you can always put them in the fridge or the freezer for about 10-15 minutes. Then pop them out and put them in an airtight container. But temperature does play a factor. All right. So this thickened up actually pretty nice, and it smells so good because of that cocoa powder. So once it's all come together, I will show you the inside here. This, let me take this spoon out. Hold on. Put that in the sink. This is what it looks like. You can see all those beautiful oats and all that dark cocoa powder in there. And then I've got some that I made earlier. Then what you're going to do is I've got this spoon from the ones I made earlier. Then what you're going to do, and this burner is not on, so I'm going to move it over here. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to take a scoop, and I use just a regular spoon, but you can use an ice cream scoop if you want to. You can use a cookie scoop. You can use 2 spoons. Whatever you have available, whatever you use to scoop out cookies. But I just use a regular teaspoon. And I just pop them on a parchment-lined baking sheet. If you don't have parchment paper, you can use aluminum foil. You can use wax paper. Just whatever you have available to you. I had parchment paper, so that's what I used. So I just scoop them out. And you can scoop them as big as you want. Or as little as you want. It just depends on how you like your cookies. And I am making this for somebody else who this is their favorite, so I'm going to not make them quite as big because I want several of them. And then once you are finished, this is what they look like on the parchment lined baking sheet. And what you can do is if they're still a little soupy or they don't seem to quite be firming up like you should, you can pop this cookie sheet in the freezer or in the fridge to firm them up. And they harden pretty fast, so usually about 30 to 45 minutes. You can pop them off the parchment lined sheet and put them on a plate and then put them in an airtight container. But that's what they look like once they come out of that pot. And then, once they have hardened, this is what the final finished product looks like. These are your no-bake cookies. Now, one of the things with these cookies, you can add more decor to them if you want to. You can add sprinkles. You can zhuzh them up any way you want to. But these were always my grandfather's favorite. They're very traditional, very, very plain, but they were always his favorite. And they were always one of my favorites to make because, like I said, they were the very first thing I learned how to make. So that is how you make your no-bake cookies. I'd love for you to share your recipes with us on the PSPL Pantry, or I'd love for you to, if you make these, I'd love for you to share your finished products with us, because one of my favorite things to do is bake. I loved it as a child, and I still love it today. And I'm so glad that you joined me in the kitchen today so I could share it with you. You guys have a wonderful week, and thanks so much for joining me today.